Well, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. We have a lot to do this evening. We're going to get started right on time. Thank you so much for joining us. It is packed. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Welcome. My name is Megan De Dios, and I serve the Boston College Clough School of Theology and Ministry as Director of Continuing Education. We're so glad to have such a full house here tonight, so thank you for coming out this evening. A special thanks goes out to America Media as well as the C21 Center. They're our co-sponsors for the event, and a special thanks to Sister Guider, who dedicated her class time for this event. So thank you, Sister Guider, for your generosity of time and space. So I'm just going to walk through the agenda for this evening, and then we're going to get started. So we're going to start by watching the American Media film, People of God, How Catholic Parish Life is Changing in the United States. The film is about an hour long, just as an FYI. We're then going to transition to a panel presentation moderated by Dr. Hosffman Ospino, Professor of Hispanic Ministry and Religious Education and Chair of the Department of Religious Education and Pastoral Ministry here at the CSTM. Our distinguished panelists include Sebastian Gomes, Executive Editor at America Media and the film's director. Yay. Nicole Pascarelli O'Brien, Pastoral Director of Operations at St. Cecilia Parish in Boston. And Most Reverend Cristiano Barbosa, Auxiliary Bishop, Episcopal Vicar for the Central Region, and Secretary for Evangelization and Discipleship for the Archdiocese of Boston. Thank you for joining us. So after the panel presentation, there's going to be an opportunity for conversation with your neighbor and then Q&A. Thanks to our presenters for granting us permission to record today's program, including the Q&A portion. Just a couple things to remember. If you do want to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand and one of us will come around with a microphone. I know this is a small room, but it helps with the recording so everyone can hear your question. Similarly to that, if you do make a comment or question, it will likely make the recording. So just be comfortable with what you're going to say before you say it. Thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, I'm going to invite my colleague James to start the film. Enjoy.
Watching this wonderful documentary about parish life in the United States of America, its changes, possibilities, and hopes, Perhaps that's one of the feelings that this film has evoked in me, a sense of hope. I have three questions, one for each of our panelists, for Sebastian, for Nicole, and for Bishop Barbosa. And then just to make it easier, we'll open it up for your own comments and your own questions, okay? So let me begin with Sebastian. What is the greatest insight you learned about U.S. Catholic parish life today while directing this documentary?
Yeah, that's a good question. Can everybody hear me? Is this close enough to the microphone? So I won't speak too long, but let me say some thank yous. So thank you all for being here tonight. This is a wonderful crowd. I mean, to be in a packed room, to be talking about these subjects is exactly what I had envisioned when we started doing this project. So thank you. I also want to thank Megan and your team. Where's Megan? Thank you so much for organizing it. I know a lot of work went into it. Professor Ospino, obviously, for hosting, who's been proactive in using the film in some of his classes. Again, that was the whole point, was to kind of build this tool. But he's also, if you don't know, a national leader in helping us engage in some of these critical kind of questions, profound demographic shifts that we're seeing across parish life. So thank you for doing this. And Nicole for representing St. Cecilia Parish, a wonderful place, as we saw, and can talk more about. We initially invited Father Cristiano, but we are so blessed to have Bishop Cristiano with us this evening. So thank you so much for taking time to be with us. A lot can change quickly in the Catholic Church, despite some people's... So it was always my vision, as I said, to kind of create a film that would be a tool that would start a conversation about the different pastoral realities that parishes are facing. Parishes are still the common point of contact for Catholic life in this country, and that's a really important thing to say at the outset. They're not the only point of contact, obviously, and they won't necessarily be the primary point of contact in future generations, but they are the common experience for most Catholics today. And so that's why it's essential to study them and to engage with the different questions, pastoral challenges that they're facing. During the production, I would often tell our team, what we're trying to do is hold up a mirror to the church in this country and to say, this is who we are in all of our diversity, and let's talk about that. Now, I do want to say, obviously, it's impossible to be totally comprehensive, right, with a project like this. So there are many stories, obviously, and many Catholic communities that are not represented in this film, that are present and active and living their Catholic life here in this country. But I really do hope that if you watch the film, as we all did, if people use it in different pastoral and educational settings, that every Catholic can in some way feel represented by something they saw, and also in some way be challenged by something they saw, or be introduced to a different expression of Catholicism that they might not have realized. So in answer to the question, Hosffman, thank you, I'll mention three things. So what was the greatest insight you learned about U.S. Catholic parish life while directing the film? The first one is there are Hispanic and Latino communities everywhere we went. So starting the film with the story in Phoenix was important because of the growth aspect and raising the question about integration and the challenge of cultures living next to each other, different expressions of Catholicism. We all know, and you can speak to a lot of your work is centered on this, and the growth of Hispanic Catholicism in the United States, right? So, but every single place that we went are established Hispanic communities. We didn't show them all in each of the places, but we met them, we talked to them, we interviewed them, we celebrated Mass with them. And so that's a really important thing. So, the question of integration, pastoral needs, and most importantly, probably representation, need to be asked of parishes everywhere, not just in the Southwest. The second thing is there are many more questions than answers. So, we set out to document the shifts and trends, as I say, but very few parishes, and you could kind of see that in the film at times, have the answers to the very real challenges that a lot of them are facing. So naming the issue is one thing. That's kind of just the beginning, right? But these communities really need help to learn how to have a constructive conversation and problem-solving conversation about some of them, right? The solution is not obvious, but neither, for many communities, is the means to a solution. And so I'll just float this, that maybe this whole synod on synodality thing and the idea of inclusive listening sessions could be a remedy to some of that, or the beginning of starting to learn how to have a conversation to face some of these challenges. And then the third thing is there was one consistent thread that we experienced across the country, and that is everyone is struggling to reach young people, and no one really knows how to address it. So it comes up here and there in the different stories, but that was the one thing that everybody mentioned to us in every place that we went. We know especially that millennials and Gen Zers are hesitant, maybe suspicious, or outright, critical or turned off from institutional structures. And we raised this question a little bit in the last story with St. Cecilia, but parishes, right, sacramental life, are kind of unavoidably structural, right? So what does that mean for younger people and Catholic life? If they have a bit of an aversion to this type of structure, and our common expression of Catholicism is structural, how do we even start to think about that? So again, I don't have answers. I only am here to ask the questions and to help think through it, some of the answers with you. But I'll just leave you with those takeaways. Thank you again for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Sebastian. And Nicole, we got a glimpse of life at St. Cecilia's, no? And so part of the question that I'm going to ask you has already been answered by what we saw in the documentary. What is St. Cecilia's Parish in Boston doing to respond to demographic and cultural changes in order to remain relevant to the new generations of Catholics in the city?
I think it's a good question, and I think, I think it's a good question, but it almost felt like a trick question. I want to thank my St. Cecilia friends that are here that might be able to chime in on this too. We're not doing anything in particular that is different than we wouldn't do for anyone. So just as a point of reference, so this is, Father John is a huge fan of the Pope, as we all are. And this was part of the Pope's February prayer intention for parishes. Parishes should be close-knit communities without bureaucracy, people-centered, a place where the gift of the sacraments can be found. They have to become, once again, schools of service and generosity, with their doors always open to those who are excluded, and to those included, to all. Parishes are not a club for the few, which give a certain kind of social belonging. Please let us be daring. Let us all rethink the style of our parochial communities. Let us pray that parishes, placing communion of people, ecclesial communion, at the center, may increasingly become communities of faith, of fraternity, and of welcoming to most in need. That's literally what we are doing at St. Cecilia's, what the Pope is asking us to do. And it comes from a place of hospitality. We're just coming off Holy Week and Easter, and it's not lost to me, and some of these folks are here. It was about 150 volunteers that made Holy Week possible at St. Cecilia's. Individual volunteers, not people that are doing multiple things, because my God, Jenny Jones did everything. It's because people feel that they are welcome, that all are welcome, of all ages. I've never experienced a parish where you're looking at the altar and the altar servers range from, we had these teeny little girls, all the way through more seasoned altar servers, all working together, all for the parish. And I think that that's something you hear Father John say a lot, all are welcome. And it's in everything that we do. And I think that's what attracts people. That's what attracts our college students that are coming, whether they're in and out. We've got great stories of families who come to us, through the far-flung flock because they have students in the Boston area and they found us somehow. The far-flung flock is a whole other thing I'm sure you're all going to have questions about. But it's really just, it's not something that we're trying to create a program for. It's just who we are and who we are trying to be at all times to all people.
Oh, fabulous. How many people from St. Cecilia's are there in here tonight? Okay, wonderful. So we got a number of parishioners. Yeah. That's just great. Well, thank you very much, Nicole. No? And I think that, as I was reflecting about the leadership in many of these communities, and particularly Father John's leadership at St. Cecilia's, the question of leadership, pastoral leadership comes to mind for all of us, And that's going to be my question for you, Bishop Barbosa. As a bishop and a seminary professor, what kind of pastoral leadership do you think seminaries and theologians should cultivate to accompany the new generations in a changing church, while also honoring the legacy of Catholics who built many of our parishes?
Okay. I came mostly to listen. When I met you firstly, you were talking about the synod, and the big takeaway of this synod is not what is coming out of the synod, but the way of being a church and listening. And I learned with you that. So I really came to listen, and I think the answer to this question is they need, seminarians and future leaders of the church, those institutional leaders, because our parishes are made of many leaders. You are all leaders of Catholic theology, let us call this way, and Catholic communities too. So the answer is to expose them more to this diverse reality that we are. Like if you think about the Archdiocese of Boston, it's almost 250 parishes. And we don't think about all of them. And we cannot think about 250 parishes. You cannot think like that, right? So we think about 2, 3, 5 parishes, 10 parishes, 20 maybe. But exposing them to all of that and having them seeing things like this, which is, that every single parish in this country and in the world, they will be different. You know, they may have similarities, but they are different. And I'm really glad you finished the movie with Saint Cecilia. It's a good advertisement for Boston, right? So, but they are different, and they need to be exposed to this reality and to think more about it. I keep thinking, you know, one of the things that I went to bed thinking about today, because they sent some questions, and firstly they said, "Oh, you are just to be there and react." And when we have a question before, we need to think about them. So I avoided the question so that I would not think, but I keep thinking overnight, like and thoughts came to mind about all of this. And I was driving the beautiful Boston, 2 hours commute, right? And listen to NPR, as always I do in the morning. And then they were talking about sports and something. And then this lady came up with this phrase, you know, people crave for community. And that's why parishes will never be done. We crave for community, and we are not doing what people want. We are doing what we are and what the human beings are, right? Immigration, we have to deal with this, right? Anthropologists are tired to tell us that we are what we are as Homo sapiens sapiens because we are immigrants. The movement made us what we are. So how good it is to have this in our parishes, right? But how difficult it is also to be intentional in understanding what is integration, good integration as an encounter of all that we have to, you know, to offer to each other and to be as a community. So exposing the coming next generation of leaders of the church to these realities is important. But I don't know, you know, anything more than this. I want to learn too.
Absolutely. And the whole purpose of these initial questions is to get the conversation going. As Sebastian, as you indicated, I have used the documentary in my classes in this past semester. As a matter of fact, in my class, Ministry in a Diverse Church, you know, we watched the video, the documentary together. And my students, you know, the first one of the biggest takeaways is pretty much, you know, echoing what you have said, you know. They said everyone needs to understand that not one size fits all, you know, that there are so many experiences and that we should grow in the art of honoring those different experiences, because at the end of the day, this is the people of God, you know, coming in many forms, many traditions, many experiences, many parts of the world. Please turn to the person next to you. Choose your right or your left, you know, and then just let's spend 5 minutes in conversation. What did you hear? What did you see in this documentary? Okay, so introduce yourselves first. Okay, friends. So thank you for the enthusiasm and for the engagement, and I hope that you also had a chance to make new friends in here, so that's always great. Now, we got about 15 minutes, you know, and we have the rock stars right in front here, you know, so we got, you know, Sebastian, of course, who was involved producing, you know, developing this wonderful documentary, and Nicole with the experience of one of the parishes, and Bishop Barbosa, who as a bishop has all the answers, you know, right, and that's just a... No pressure. So, I just, you know, so let me open it up to the larger group. If you have a comment or a question that you want to ask to any of them, you know, feel free to address it directly to the person on the panel. The only thing that I will ask you as you formulate your question is be brief, okay? So comment or question. So floor is open, I will facilitate.
I have a question. Sebastian, what's next for you? So what's the next project that you want to work on? How do you want to take this on?
Like, what would be the next documentary?
Or topic that you want to work on, or
Sure, yeah.
take what you've learned and to the next phase?
Well, I mean, like, I think this still has a long shelf life because of it's a tool, right? It's a tool for us to watch it together and then talk about it. So there's a lot that we're not going to be able to talk about in 15 minutes. It needs to be, I do a lot of other things at America. I oversee all of our podcast productions and stuff. So there's lots of offerings in case you're interested in engaging more with America. But if you were to press me on like what the next documentary would be, I think it would have to be on Hispanic Catholicism in the United States. There's just so many questions that are not being addressed that need to be addressed.
Great.
Then I would ask Hosffman to make it with me.
Happy to do so.
What a good idea. This is an ask. Are you going to duplicate it and send it out to the parishes?
What do you mean?
Can we have copies of the film so that we can discuss too?
I mean, it's something we produce at America. So
Yep.
there's a link to the film at America's website.
Okay.
So if you subscribe to America, it's only $1 right now, actually, conveniently. No, I know many of you are. So thank you for
We gotta get on
engaging
that.
with our content. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's on American Media's website.
We get another hand over there.
I'm Sister Liria. I'm original from Brazil, and I work with Portuguese speaking here in Boston. And one of the questions, I grew up in a place where was no priest, but I grew up with the Catholic faith, with leaders in the church, nuns and other leaders, who we have every Sunday. We come together and pray. I did my first communion when I was 13 because was no priest. But we have the faith. And my question is, we keep talking about we don't have any more priests. We don't have leaders. We don't have priests. We don't have priests. Where are the priests? And my question is, could the church think about like a nun come responsible for a parish? You will not give the sacraments. You will not hear confessions. We don't do that there too, but we have the Catholic faith. Beautiful. And we have nuns who do that. When my dad and mom passed away, a nun went there and did the service for us. It was beautiful. And we don't lose our faith because we don't have the priest. We value the priest, yes. But here I see is very hard even to think about that. And I don't know if Father Cristiano will give some as a bishop.
Is that for me?
It is. She said to your name.
I'm glad you called me Father, Sister Lida. So you understand that I'm new in the job, right? So yeah, I also came from this reality back in Brazil, like having parishes as community of communities, and with thousands of people. And as a seminarian, every single Sunday I used to do the celebration of the word and talk. We would even use the word preach. But in Portuguese, is the translation for that is pregar a palavra. But this, I know there's a lot of cultural also sensibility, and it takes a long time to turn this boat, even a little bit. So the church is, one of the things is that church is priestly centered, right? We have this today. And there is a reason we cannot escape of a church that is not sacramentally centered. The sacrament is the center of our life in the church. But the understanding of the sacrament is something else that we need to think more in this place, for instance, right? So this is a school of theology. And think about our ecclesiology too, and the mission of the church, and the place of the church, the place of the priest too. So I don't have the answer, sister. I know that in many places in the global south, they will keep having nuns and fathers and mothers of family ministering the word in faraway communities and bringing communion to them from the central parishes, driving hours sometimes to reach those communities because we have a shortage of priests. So and they are keeping their faith. So I don't know if that's what you want to listen, but But that's what I have to say now. We don't have any power or strong opinion. You know, I have my opinions, but I think there is a cultural sensibility in the country too that we need to address slowly.
Sebastian?
I spent a lot of time the last year thinking about the Synod. I went to Rome covering it, been processing it. I'm probably going back next October to cover the second part of it. There's a lot of interesting points in the synthesis report that the Synod produced in October 2023, but the one that jumps out to me right now on this issue is quite interesting. The Synod said that, after the Second Vatican Council, the mission of the laity was to go out into the world, right? It was empower the lay vocation to evangelize the kind of secular world beyond that. That was our realm as lay people. And the administration, the governance, the running of the institutional part of the church was the responsibility of the clerics, of the hierarchy. And I don't remember what number it is, but the synods acknowledged that and then said, but maybe that's not necessarily the case. And maybe we're entering a period where there needs to be lay involvement in the administration of the institutional church. And I'll leave it there. But this type of conversation is happening at the level of the global synod on synodality. So it's a very good point, sister, and it's not an uncommon point. I mean, now that we live in this synodal framework, we can talk about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. If I can also add one thing, sister, and thank you for asking that question. In the United States of America, there are almost 3,000 parishes without a priest in residence, So that what you're describing, that's what's happening in Brazil, is happening in many parts of Latin America and Asia and other parts of the world. It's already happening in the U.S. In these big cities like Boston, New York, and so on, we still talk a lot about, no, we need priests. But the Midwest, the Northwest, is a different conversation. Oh,
Yeah.
sister.
I think I'm going to give a plug for the church in the 21st century. We're talking about young people not being in the institutional church, but they certainly are being nourished in different ways. Every month here at BC, we have the group Mass and Mingle. That's what it's called. And they come to church, they come to Mass at around 5:30, and then they go over right across from the church into a beautiful building where they have a wonderful dinner together. It's not pizza party, but a nice dinner. And someone gives maybe a 10 or 15 minute reflection to them on some topic or whatever. You know how many they are? Like 200 come. And so I think we also have to think about that, that there are a lot of young people that are interested in building up their faith and getting closer to God. It may not be that they come to the parish church, but it is happening. And I think we have to consider that, to think about that.
Thank you very much, sister. There's a question over there.
Thank you. According to the Boston Catholic Directory, since 2019, half of all our parishioners who were attending Mass previously have stopped attending. What should we do about that as parishes?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Is that because of the pandemic? I couldn't quite
When
get
is 2019?
So before the
X.
pandemic. Okay, so definitely the pandemic period, though, is part of that.
Well, we are trying. Everyone is aware of this, and it's vital to have people in parishes. We have some programs at the office. We have the Vibrant Parishes, accompany some parishes and some priests, with some people who are specialized on this and helping them, and even like pastors to see what is happening. But we have very limited resources too. We took for granted they would come before, or keep coming, and I don't know if 40% did not come back. So what we are doing, we are trying to keep up what we have, I think, now, but we need to think, of course, about this reality. But I'm just beginning to hear. I don't have solutions.
I don't have a solution either, but I mean, we tried to raise this with the story of Saint Cecilia, right? With like this far-flung flock in the ministry you have. It's just a reality. And it's like, we have to be honest and say, okay, like the way the world works now and how people engage with the communities that they engage with, especially digitally, that trend is not going to stop. We can't fight the world on that as a community. We can hold up a different model of community that's sacramental and physical, and like what Scott says in the film there about bread and wine and oil, and all that stuff is so important and central. But I don't think we can fight it. So there's also the element of like what you guys are grappling with, like what does it mean that we want to push people back to church, but God is also present in the experience that they're having not going to church. I don't know. That's why we're here watching the film, talking about it, and highlighting that St. Cecilia is more than any other parish that I've come across in the English-speaking world is at least just trying to respond to it in some way. But we don't have the answers. But if other people have thoughts, please.
I think we have one last question over there, and then that will be our last question.
In the making of this movie, did you hear anything about evangelization in the sense that our parish is doing anything to reach out to people, our parishioners, inviting people to come to church? Has anybody talked to people who've left? Creating a space beyond Mass. I mean, Mass is a Source and Summit, I get that. But when I was a student in Minnesota and other places, it's really hard to get people to come to Mass because it's just so different. They feel awkward. So are we creating spaces where we reach out to new people, or we listen to people who've left as to like what is going on, what are they looking for, what can we do for them?
My sense is no. Like I still think most of the people who are wonderful, faith-filled people are just we're still thinking of the parish as like this structure that has very definite lines around it, and we can only think in that structure. So moving beyond that, the only thing we know how to do kind of in our DNA is to invite people into that structure instead of expanding the boundaries of the structure or changing the shape of the structure. I don't have the answer for what that shape looks like, but my sense is like the common experience from my travels doing this film with evangelization are people's default is to bring people into the structure, and that wasn't really Jesus's pastoral strategy. It's a bit of a biblical tangent, but like he didn't bring people to sacred space. He went out into secular space and ministered to people there. So that was a big difference between him. That was something that made him stand out. So, and maybe the encounter, whatever that evangelical thrust is out in secular space, might be more important initially than going to Mass. Maybe I should hesitate saying that. I don't know. But forgive me, Bishop.
I just want to talk just briefly about the whole idea of the far-flung flock. This was filmed 2021? So 22. So the far-flung flock, what Father John calls them, say that fast. It started with our online Mass, and you heard about the analytics and things like that. There are about 700 people on their email listserv. At 9:30 Mass on Sunday, when we have 500 or 600 people in the pews, we have 2,000 watching live. It's a huge community. By the end of the week, we have 10,000 people that have streamed that Mass. The numbers are astronomical, and I love numbers. And one of the things that we talk a lot about at the staff level is, are we seeing numbers in the pews go down and the live stream go up? And we don't. We actually see both go up. And that's something that we're very conscious of. You heard, we're grappling with how do we handle this, and Father John says it's out of control. It is. But in the best way possible. So this past October, we invited the Far-Flung Flock, actually their leadership team asked to come, to the parish because they were scattered all over the country and all over the world. We had 125 people from 26 states and 4 countries come to our parish for the weekend. And as a staff, we spent a lot of time talking about what do we offer as a parish? What can folks expect from us? And we drew the line at sacraments. We don't do sacramental prep online. You know, we are a sacramental church. And we spent a lot of time talking about the message we wanted to convey is what we're doing with the live stream and Father John's message, and when we're streaming, you know, talks that we have at the parish and things like that, is it's supplemental. We want you to be involved in your parish. And we got a lot of pushback. We got a lot of pushback from people in different parts of the country who said to us, don't you think we'd want to be in our home parish? But what we're hearing is a message inconsistent with the Catholic Church that we know and love. And we're hearing that from you. So we would rather forego the community in our neighborhood and join your community because that's the message. So we have people, you know, from the Cotswolds, England, and we have people from New York, and we have people from Arizona, and they are part of our knitting ministry and our wisdom and mature spirituality group, and you know, are taking what we're doing with our hunger and homelessness ministry and bringing it to their neighborhoods. So it's not for lack of wanting to be part of the community, it's feeling like there isn't a community and trying to seek that out. And I think that's something, you know, as much as it feels like a lot, and we have, you know, our parishioners in the bench and our parishioners online, and you see Jeff in the live stream and all of these pieces. It's serving a purpose in the larger church that doesn't exist right now in a lot of places. And to hear people call it, you know, call their parishes, you know, a desert is heartbreaking. And we would rather be able to offer that community in some way. And to Sebastian's point, we're not changing this. This is what it is. If you go on our social media, you will see comments from all over the country because there's an appreciation for something that doesn't exist in places. So I think that's a bigger kind of question for all of us, is how do we create that in more places?
Fabulous. And before I hand it over to Megan to close the evening, Sister Meg Guider will have the final word.
This is a response to the question about what can we do. And I think one of the things we can do is not only about structures, but it's about time. And we have this dominical mentality, and we have a mentality about Sabbath. We have to create other kinds of Sabbath time. 8 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock noon isn't a time on Sundays that is Sabbath time any longer for so many people. So what can we do? We see on campus evening masses. Students flock to them. Not noon masses or 8 o'clock in the morning, but I think in the general public, we see this especially in immigrant communities that have masses later in the evenings on Sundays or Saturdays or Wednesdays or Thursdays. Or what can we learn from the evangelicals about a better use of time that's appealing? People get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym. Maybe they would get up early to go to Mass if you created that Sabbath space for them. We haven't really tried it.
Thank you so much, Sister Guider. Please join me in thanking our moderator and our panelists.